What's up, guys? Thank you for joining this webinar session. And today we're going to be talking about the questions that your sales rep is probably afraid to ask. I'm really excited to be here with Tessa Lamborn. So, Tessa is a fabulous, I'll say, property manager REIT. And we'll talk a little bit more about her background. But ultimately, she's the individual that's awarding work to us as contractors. So, we have the opportunity to be able to ask her the questions that us or maybe even our sales reps are afraid to ask. So, Tessa, thanks for joining. And if you don't mind, can you give us a little background on yourself and kind of who you are?
Yeah. Hi, Chad. Thanks for having me with you today. I'm really excited to have this conversation and share what I know. I've been in construction project management for just about 10 years now. Started kind of, at the base of operations, learning the administrative side and paperwork, and worked my way up to handling my own projects, smaller at first and up to larger and more complex as I went.
Very
So,
cool. Very cool. So you, when there's a roof project, you're the individual that has to find the contractor, make sure it's the right scope of work, and ultimately sign the contract to give it to the contractor. Is that safe to say?
yes, that is all safe to say.
Okay. So I guess my first question to kind of to enter into this, how did you find a contractor? Were they given to you, or like, what did you do to find contractors? Like, where were you looking?
Sometimes they were given, yes, based off of previous work. If the property manager or other project managers had companies that they had worked with before, and they had had good experiences with them, I used them. Another way that I would find contractors if I was in a new market or just wasn't really sure, um, needing additional bids, that kind of thing. There's a manufacturer website that has recommendations based off of certifications. Um, I have found them that way, and built relationships from there. Um, but a lot of it, I would say, is probably recommendations from other project managers and property managers that I worked with.
Okay, so it's internal networking. There's so much buzz around Google, right? And like being able to Google and search, right? I always joke, it's like it's the new yellow pages. Um, did you ever use Google? Did you ever trust that to be able to like search like roofing contractor in New Mexico, or like was that even, I guess, in your arsenal of finding contractors?
On its own, absolutely not. But definitely use Google to check reviews, and kind of reputations in the area. Just because they're certified doesn't necessarily mean they are the most sought after. So definitely kind of balancing those internal networks and those manufacturer certifications against like real world experiences.
Okay, so yeah, you were going to Elevate, GAF, Carlisle, wherever it was, because you knew your portfolio had those warranties. So then you go there, you'd look for the vendors, and then that would kind of start. And then the website was more of just the face behind the name of did they offer service? Like, did they have, is it a house or a commercial building on the landing page, like that side?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so what were you looking for in a contractor? So when you went to a website, so one, cool, you went to Elevate's website and you see ABC Roofing that's up there. Was there anything specific that you were looking for?
Well, being in the commercial space, definitely wanted a commercial focused roofer. In most cases, that's a thing you can find. There were occasions where we had to use those that did both residential and commercial, and not that that's necessarily a bad thing. Um, but I was dealing typically with low slope roof situations, so I didn't really need contractors that were great with sloped roofs and shingles.
Yeah.
Um, so that would be one thing. Again, with the reviews, like making sure that their actual production was quality, and also the way they were able to interact with their customers was professional, and left people feeling like they had been truly taken care of, not just with their roofing needs, but like treated well as human beings also, was another really big thing that I looked for. Communication is key for me. Email's a great way to keep track of things, but I like to know that if I do pick up the phone and call, they will do the same, so we can have a conversation and discuss whatever is needed at the moment.
That's interesting. So I was on a website for a contractor that's on the East Coast, and I thought it was cool. So they actually had a QR code. It was on the website, so it was like you take the phone to the website, but it was a text me. So like normally it was phone call, right? Fill out the form, call us, right? Different things like that. They actually had it where you can scan the QR code and start texting with them. So I thought that was cool. I mean, just in my side, I would rather send a text message than call somebody. And I think it's cool how certain contractors are taking that next step to be able to get there. So
Yeah, I mean, technology definitely has a place in everything, and I do think it's great that we're finding all these different modes to communicate personally. And I'm not going to say I don't do it because I definitely do it, but there are certain situations professionally where I just don't feel like a text message is the way I want to communicate. Um, but that might just be a me thing.
and I get that's all that matters, right? Because you got to make it easy. So I've been in like so many personality assessments and training. I mean, the whole goal of all of those is that you have to communicate in the other person's communication path and style,
Absolutely.
right? So that's a huge, huge part. So make great point inside there. All right. So what was it in your opinion that made certain contractors better than others?
In my experience for what I was looking for, having done the project management, but also having worked in the acquisitions phase, getting due diligence inspections, roofs were obviously a big component that were looked at. For me, it was responsiveness, communication, especially on that upfront piece with the acquisitions, tight timelines, quality, thorough information was needed. So those were kind of the two initial pieces that I would look for. How well that was handled, could they meet deadlines? Did the reports contain the amount of information that I needed? Were they able to answer questions in a timely manner if I didn't quite understand something in a report or wasn't really sure, what exactly was being called out or why they were recommending a replacement over repairs? So that would be kind of like the first things I would look for. As far as actual project production, again, communication is also key. Being on the construction side, there was a lot of engagement with the property managers as well, so they could communicate with tenants. So making sure that I was able to get, paperwork in place first, that I knew what the production schedule actually was, if there were any changes or delays for whatever reason. So really, I think the overall piece is communication, but obviously, like production, you want quality work as well. No leaks when it's done, especially in the replacement world. Yeah, I think those are all really important things, but communication is number one.
Interesting. So would you rather work with a account manager or would you rather work with directly like a service manager? Like, and I asked that question because there's so many different structures that are set up, right? Because some your smaller companies you might work directly with it. They don't have a sales team. They don't have anything else like that. But then when you start working with those larger entities, they have account managers and they have individuals, right, that are just solely there for the communication side, but they might not have the answers right away. Is it would you rather have good communication with delayed answers, or would you rather have delayed communication with exact answers?
Um, I mean, I think in my personal experience, I have worked more with account managers than I have with service managers or like kind of more boots on the ground um, people, but I've done a little bit of all of it, I guess, over the years. So just from my experience doing more with the account managers, it's probably more delayed answers or delayed with good answers than like exact. But for most of what I was doing, that was typically fine for what I needed. Um, but I do like on that note, I appreciate being able to speak with someone who's maybe more like actually on the roof doing the work if that is the level of information that I need. So having that available was always great when it was needed. But typically account management was probably just fine.
And that's what I see on the larger side, right? But communication is a huge, huge part of that. Any team that I've ran, it's always been if an email comes in, acknowledge the email. Like, I don't care if you got the answer or not, just say received, right? Working on it. I'll have an answer to you by end of day or whatever it is. That to me brings me peace of mind much more than, 4 hours of not responding or days, right, of not responding because like, I'm getting you the answer, but I haven't responded. And then, like, that creates that confusion and frustration. At least
Yeah,
that's what I
absolutely. No, I completely agree. I think, if you don't have the answer right away, that's okay. Um, Typically, I didn't need the information quite that fast, but yeah, just a quick like, "Hey, got your email. I'm working on getting you the answer. I plan on having it to you by whenever that is great because, like you said, that way I know like it's been seen. You're working on it. I'm not wondering if my email just got lost in the ether or not.
Yep. So there's a lot of different platforms to be able to create reports on. Um, and that's one thing I think that's like a constant technology battle that we have. Did you guys have any type of template or information that you needed for your owners or for whoever, portfolio owners, anything else like that? Or was it kind of just at your discretion?
A lot of the larger companies that I've worked with all use very similar systems. And I would say that those were great because they offered photos of defects, descriptions of what they were. Some had pricing, like individual, kind of more granular pricing, some didn't. But that allowed me to better see the actual condition of the roof that I was trying to assess and build, a 5-year plan for. Um, Smaller companies a lot of times don't have necessarily that type of technology. So even if it wasn't necessarily in that format, um, as long as there were photos, a good description of the conditions that they found on the roof, and not just like a one page, here's your price to do what I think needs to be done. Um, as long as there was some level of detail, and again, like the ability for me to follow up with questions to get more detail if I needed it, that was fine. I didn't have a standard template that I sent out to them to have them use. Um, Although that's really not a bad idea for something to work on going forward.
All right, so we got steps we can get better. Uh,
Absolutely.
what I'm a contractor. I'm doing work. My communication has been great. My inspections have been fabulous. What outside forces um, did you have to deal with when either choosing the contractor that you're going to award work to, or choosing the contractor that maybe was required? Right. So you talk about some of those manufacturer warranties, different things like that. What outside forces changed what roofers you could or could not work with?
Well, budget is certainly always a consideration. So depending on what the roof needed versus what the budget was, I would say generally speaking and overall, if the roof needed more than the budget allowed, there was definitely always some negotiation with those above me to make sure that we were giving the roof and in turn the tenants what they actually needed and not just what fit the budget. If a property was purchased that had an existing warranty and it was also still under like a workmanship warranty, that obviously would limit initially which contractor we could use. I was never opposed to opening new avenues with new contractors, but again, like, is their communication what I need? Is their quality of work what's going to be best for the roof long term? Um, there are a lot of different components that go into not just that initial choice, but the continued work, right? Because there's, initial repairs that are done when a property is first purchased, but then preventative maintenance in those ongoing years. Like, were those initial repairs done well? Have we continued to have issues? I mean, anything can happen at any given time, but like, has it been a continual thing where we're just losing confidence in the quality of the work, or has it been absolutely great? And yes, this is truly who we want to continue using going forward as long as the quality of work stays the same.
Yeah, I think that's awesomely said. So what was going through my head is I've been involved in situations where contractors might be called out for a manufacturer's warranty, but every single time they're like, "Nope, it's billable to you. Nope, it's billable to you." Where they're not using, I'll say integrity. Maybe that's not the right word, right? But like those types of different things that can probably really affect a long-term relationship with you guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that to me, that brings to mind a situation I had years ago where there was a contractor that seemed to always recommend replacement. Um, and yes, there are absolutely roofs that cannot continue to be repaired and they truly need to be replaced, and that is absolutely fine. But when 95% of your recommendations are only that, and there's no I guess it got to a point where I just really didn't feel like I was getting a good explanation as to why that was the only option in their opinion. It just kind of I felt like other avenues needed to be explored, especially when, the other 2 of the 3 that I was bidding with were not recommending that immediately.
It's weird how it always fit their specific system that they wanted to install too, right? It's like,
Yep, absolutely. Every time.
no, that's interesting. So when I'm training contractors to be able to create a replacement quote, or let's just say an inspection, right? The first thing that I always say is that even though the roof needs to be replaced, it looks like a giant quilt. You can literally step and there's blisters and bubbles and all kinds of water trapped underneath it. That doesn't change the fact that like you're not there, right? Like we need to be able to document all of these deficiencies to be able to justify the replacement. Because at the end of the day, this isn't your money that you're spending because you got to go get it from your side, right?
Yes, yeah, and I would say personally, I would much rather a lengthier report with a lot of photos, even if it is, kind of like the same defect in multiple places, being able to see that and have that noted in multiple locations to be able to take that back to my side of the table and say, "Hey, this is a really bad situation. This is not something we want to repair, for however many years before we replace. Like this truly is an issue that we need to deal with now." For the sake of our funding, for the sake of our tenants and their comfort and confidence in our care of the facility that they're leasing. So yeah, that's I always prefer more to less, certainly.
How often? I don't know if required is the right word, but how often did you walk the buildings?
So it kind of depended on my specific situation. Sometimes I wasn't the one walking the roof, but I would have my local counterpart walk at least once a week. For larger projects. Obviously, if it's just, repairs over a couple of days, a pre-construction meeting and a punch list walk were typically all that were needed. Longer projects, definitely, again, with the larger companies, it was easier for them to send daily photos, daily reports. Um, Once a week walks at a minimum with either me if I was able to be on site or my counterparts locally if that was who I was relying on to be kind of like my eyes and ears um, for the bigger projects. Yes.
What about in general? Did you walk the buildings once a year? Did you walk like outside of big projects? What's the norm, I guess, as far as like having a big portfolio? Do you walk them once a year, or do you rely on the contractor to get your photos, or what does that look like?
I mean, again, it kind of depends on the situation, right? Like if it's a brand new warranted roof, we're not getting any complaints from tenants, then probably, once or twice a year, having the contractor get up, do the annual preventative maintenance, give us an inspection report, let us know what's going on, probably fine. If it's a roof that's a little bit older or we've been having known issues with, I would say probably once a month. Um, Me, local counterpart, building engineer, getting up there, taking a look, especially if we're having complaints from tenants. Another thing that has popped into my mind when it comes to the roof, it's not always just the membrane, right? Like, I want to know about the components on the roof too. Like, do the HVAC units look like they've been flashed in well? Have they been flashed in at all? Is it possible that the leak the tenant's experiencing is actually coming from the unit and not the roof itself? Um, so roofers who are able to give some information, like with the understanding that they are not HVAC technicians, but that they can look at those details on the roof and give good quality feedback on those as well is huge.
You make such a great point inside there because um, at the end of the day, when there's water on the floor, it always seems like the roofer is the one that is to call, right? And it doesn't matter if it came from the foundation, doesn't matter if it came from the sprinkler, doesn't matter if it came from the HVAC unit. It does not matter. It's the roof. The roof is failing. So documenting that stuff kind of helped the roofer to be able to say, hey, HVAC unit door is not attached, right? Or missing fasteners in it, or whatever, like you said, that the units or whatever's up on that roof, right?
Yes.
Uh, Um, have you ever had to fire someone or fire a contractor or get rid of a contractor because of their documentation?
once, yes, and it was really unfortunate. I think it's something that could be easily avoided, but again, it comes right back to that communication piece. I don't know if I want to get. Do you want me to get into the details of it, or just
I'm just
leave it really?
questions everyone's afraid to ask. Okay, so what could have that contractor done different to not get fired? How about that?
Well, it was kind of a combination of things with this particular contractor. They had been awarded more than one contract, and there had been some issues with a job that had already been completed. That just it really didn't feel like there was a lot of. It just really didn't feel like they were trying to work with us on the issues that had presented themselves post recover. Um, there was another roof that they had been contracted to do that had not started yet. And unbeknownst to us or them, the gravel removal contractor had already been there and removed the gravel from the roof like months before, and no one knew. So again, with communication, I need to know when you're there. I need to know what you're doing. I was shocked that none of the tenants said anything about it. So I guess the good news in that is that no one was disrupted, but it was a very uneasy feeling knowing that this roof had been up without the proper components for months and no one, including the contractor, knew. Um, so that was,
Uh,
communication's key.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's working with you guys, right? So like doing something on their own, even if they put the most beautiful roof on in the world, it doesn't matter because if the tenants who has, let's just say, whatever it is, something that's noise sensitive, right? And all of a sudden you have someone on a roof tearing something off or saw cutting in it, that's not good for you, right?
No, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. I mean, it's the roof is a vital component of the building, right? And we have to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to keep that promised, you know, watertight seal above their business. But if it's disruptive to their business, that's not good. If they're, an operator with a sensitive, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just if there's any reason that they have that they need to be notified if it's going to be loud, if there's going to be dust falling down, if they have a lab. I've definitely been in situations like that where the tenant has a lab inside and they need to know when there's going to be any kind of potential for particles to be falling from above so they can make sure they cover their work so nothing gets contaminated. I mean, that's if I don't know what's happening, I can't provide them with the information that they need to keep their businesses operating continuously. And that's no good for me. That's no good for the property manager. That's certainly no good for the tenant. And it's not going to bode well for the relationship with the contractor moving forward.
I had a project. It was a restaurant. It was in Texas, and we were replacing the roof. They did not want the business disrupted. It was an insurance job, right? So we did it at night, and we did it at night thinking that we were doing all of this beautiful stuff. We had the lights set up. We got the roof replaced. All of it, right? Did not disrupt it. You know what we didn't do?
What
We
did you
did it.
not do?
We did not assume that the dust from everything above those ceiling tiles, right? So they came in at 9 o'clock or whatever to be able to open the restaurant at 10, and the entire seating area was covered with like that drop ceiling dust everywhere. Right? So,
Oh,
like, it
no.
didn't matter how beautiful the roof was, we literally destroyed their business on everything inside. So, I mean, talk about tables and chairs and the floors and all the cleaning they did was worth nothing, right? And it's like, it doesn't matter how beautiful that roof was, I was not the superhero that day. Everyone hated me that day. So, you make a really, really good point, right? That it's the tenant inside that ultimately, even as a roofing contractor that we're working for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point, kind of back to those like being able to inspect the components and tell me about the details on the roof, repairs, replacement, whatever the work may be, keeping that kind of like full perspective on everything that can be affected. Do we need to cover anything inside? Does the work need to be done after hours? Those kind of like being able to ask those questions and get those answers before the work is done so there are no nasty surprises in the morning or at the end of the project. Absolutely key. I say the
Now
word absolutely a lot.
Well, absolutely. Um, how important was the appearance of the crews? I think one thing that our industry struggles at is A, having clothes that doesn't have asphalt cement wiped all over them, and then number 2, having the same clothes, like the same color, the logos on the shirts. How important was that when you were hiring a contractor, right, going to your building, working for your tenants? How important was that?
I mean, it's certainly always nice when there is some sort of identifiable uniform, logo, what have you, so the tenants know who it is that's climbing
Mhm.
up on the roof, so I know who to look for when I'm on site. Um, it's helpful, but it's I mean, I don't know, people who's or a roofer whose clothes show that he's doing his job, I don't think is the worst thing ever. So like clean and pristine is not necessarily the thing, but it is nice when it's easy to identify the people who are doing the work. So if we do get a tenant like, hey, there's some guy climbing up a ladder on the roof, what's happening? We can say, hey, that's whoever from ABC company there to do some repairs, no need to worry. Um, but it's not absolutely vital. I mean, I would say as long as there is somewhat of a professional presentation and the guy's not up on the roof shirtless, it's
I
pretty
won't
much
say we
fine.
haven't been there. We've absolutely been there, but understood.
Same. It's an
Uh,
interesting phone call to make to ask your contractor to please put their shirt on.
yeah, understood. So, the unspoken rule, don't ever show up to a job site with new boots or a new hard hat. Like, you don't do that. Throw it on the ground, get it dirty. So, as long you don't have to be absolutely clean, but having something to be able to show your company, or to be able to show, A, you're a construction worker, right? The safety side of it. Pluses. Safe to say?
Yes, definitely safe to say.
Okay. Um, what's the one thing that a contractor can do that would make them a superhero to either you or your tenant?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Communication every time. Um, Knowing what they're doing, being able to communicate that not just to me, but to tenants as well. Being visible to some extent. So if there is an issue, I mean, typically a tenant will run the issue like through the building engineer. It'll come to me. I will speak to the contractor. But if it's something more immediate, being visible enough that they know who to speak to get the problem resolved. Again, if it's an immediate thing that needs to maybe skip a few channels or be dealt with in that moment, being able to anticipate any potential issues, dust falling from the roof, um, kind of being able to foresee any potential additional issues that maybe aren't seen from above, to ensure that tenant's business runs uninterrupted. They have minimal interruption. Mitigating as many things up front as possible is always key. On the flip side of that, another great thing they can do is if there is any unforeseen issue that comes up, getting ahead of it, right? Like, don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. So, okay, we've hit a snag, how do we fix it? um being able to get in front of those things as quickly as possible to get back on track, and again, mitigating tenant interruption as much as possible or discomfort as much as possible, all day every day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, um, I truly appreciate you coming on and being able to answer these questions because I feel from my side, I learned something in this. And I hope everybody who's watching did as well because we got to be able to ask the questions. The biggest thing I see within our industry is that we assume because we've been in the industry for 20 or 30 years, it's like, oh yeah, that's common. That's normal. And what's changing every single day is the tenant or the people that we're working for. And when I look at a property manager, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when I look at a property manager or REIT or wherever persona you want to wrap it around, you guys are the middle of either the owners and the tenants that are there, and you're responsible for making sure that A, the tenant is happy, they don't leave, and that ultimately each one of those spaces are leased out. Is that safe to say?
Yes, that's definitely safe to say. I've worked for management and ownership, so for me, sometimes those are kind of one and the same. But making sure their expectations have been met, the project is on time, it is on budget. Again, ensuring that the tenant's business has been as uninterrupted as possible. Also, a big concern. and then handing it off to the property manager, knowing that I have overseen a project that has been completed with quality, so they have as few issues moving forward as possible is huge for me. I think one thing I always try to remember whenever I'm approaching a project with a contractor is that we're all people. So I try to ask as many questions as I can to understand the project better because I'm not a roofer. I don't know all the things, but I try to know as many of them as I can so I can be a good resource for them, for the owner, for the property manager, the tenants, whomever. Um, and I hope that I'm some kind of resource for them too if they have questions about, a specific tenant's business or whatever it may be. So thank you for having me today. I'm happy to have been able to share the little bit that I know and hopefully it helps.
So thank you, thank you. One team, right? Ask questions, and if something comes up, get ahead of it. And at the end of the day, over communicate. I say to all of my contractors that I work with that if someone reaches out asking for an update, that means you failed to be proactive enough, right? So communicate that. Figure out what's going on each day. Send an email, right? If it's an end of day, send an email each day. A lot
Just
of
a
the
quick note. Here's
yeah,
what we did.
and a lot of the systems that we all use have those capabilities to send daily reports and different things like that. Because at the end of the day, right, you're there to be able to make that tenant happy and know what's going on. So I love it.
Absolutely. And you made a really good point. Like, we're not adversaries. We're not on opposite sides of the table. Like, we are both working toward the common goal of providing a great roof for all the tenants. So let's work together, um, and make it happen.
Thank you. Thank you. I truly appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chad. Have a good one.